Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Horn Call Podcast, the official podcast of the International Horn Society. My name is James Bolden. I'm the publications editor for the IHS and your host. As we draw closer to the end of the year, please remember that the IHS is a 501c3 organization, which means we can accept tax-deductible donations from anyone who pays United States taxes. We're primarily a volunteer-run organization, so just remember, membership and donations are truly what help us to deliver all the programs we offer, like scholarships, composition support, and awards. We're truly grateful for your support, which helps connect horn players across the world. Visit hornsociety.org/donate to make your gift. I hope you'll join me in supporting the IHS with a charitable donation. My guest today is musician first class Erika Loke from the United States Naval Academy Band in Annapolis, Maryland. We had a really great conversation talking about Erika's work with the Naval Academy Band, as well as her experience playing the Wagner Tuba, music for horn and electronics, and her work as the editor for the IHS's Military Matters column in the Horn Call. So without further delay, here's my conversation with Erika Loke. Erika, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And I would love to get just kind of for the listeners who may not be familiar with who you are. You're, of course, the Military Matters editor for the Horn Call. Give us kind of the brief background on the position you hold right now and kind of your path to doing that, and your journey on the horn, so to speak.
Sure. So I guess, kind of going chronologically, I grew up in Los Angeles, and then I did my undergrad degree at USC.
Mm-hmm.
And then I continued my little journey east across the US. I did my master's degree at Wichita State University. And it was a cool assistantship program. I think they still have, where you're a graduate assistant at the university, and it comes with a position in the Wichita Symphony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen
And
that. I think it still is. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a one of a kind program. And I was thinking about this morning, and actually, um, my dad was the one who brought it to my attention because he saw it advertised in the Horn Call.
Oh, how about that? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, he saw it, and there was like, "Hey, you're looking at graduate programs. Look at this. You can have an actual orchestral job." So I went there, had a really great time. I mean, it was amazing. I didn't think I could get a better education in how to be an orchestral horn player than sitting next to my professor on a subscription series, pops concerts, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we'd work on stuff there, and then we'd go back to lessons and talk about, what went on in the orchestra. And I mean, I wish everybody could have that experience.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I first had that kind of experience when I was at Aspen, and
Mm-hmm.
just sitting in the section with these really accomplished horn players was just amazing. So from there, the fall of 2012, I remember that particular fall. It felt like all of the orchestras were just imploding.
Mm.
That I wrote a paper about it for a class that there were all these orchestras that were held up as really good examples of how to do orchestra right.
Yeah.
And they were doing all these creative programming. They were trying to reach new audiences. It seemed like they were doing everything right, but I think 4 out of the 5 that were in this document I'd read, they were all in financial trouble.
Oh, was this from like an ICSOM thing, or like were they having labor disputes
Yeah.
maybe? Or
Yeah, it was labor disputes. No,
okay,
unfortunately,
yeah,
the same kind of stuff that always happens.
right.
Um, so when this was all happening, I was starting my master's degree. A friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you heard about the president's own Marine band?"
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm looking at the posting for the job, I'm looking at like the salary and benefits and the description of the kinds of things they perform. And just with this whole thing going on, I was like, oh, well, clearly I need to go be in a military band.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you get great pay and benefits, and there's the best job security you could probably ask for as a musician. And
Yeah,
I get to play the
it's
world.
federally funded. Yeah.
Yeah, that just it's really heartbreaking every time there's a labor issue that comes up with the orchestras. Um, definitely there's ups and downs with the bands and people trying to cut them. Um, but especially like during the pandemic, I mean, you can't beat the job security of,
Right.
we were still getting paid our full salary even when we weren't necessarily playing.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed there was a lot of good online content coming out from armed forces musical groups. And so, that I think they stepped up as quickly as anybody else. I mean, of course, lots of orchestras and lots of places were doing, videos and educational kinds of things. But I think, the U.S. military was certainly they were not slackers in that respect. They were really on top of things, putting out, warm up videos and guides to things. So it was great to have that stuff out there.
Oh, so going back to your question of just sort of the journey of how I got to where I am, um, you know, I knew that I wanted to get a job at one of the premier bands.
Hmm.
And most of those are located in the Washington, D.C. area.
Right.
And so when I finished up in Wichita, I got in my car and drove all the way east to DC, where I started my DMA at the University of Maryland.
Okay. That's a good school. It's a great school.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it there. It's such a great university and great music program. But it was really cool to be there, and then just every time a band audition came up, great. I can still stay in my same apartment, just drive under an hour to the audition, and
Hmm.
if it was so much more relaxing to do that than when I'd been traveling to auditions, where you have to like give up work for that period of time,
Hmm.
pay for the hotel, arrange your airport transportation, and I mean, most of the time when I was taking auditions, it was okay. You got your 5 minutes in the first round. You don't get feedback, and bye.
Hmm.
So then I was really lucky that in my third year of my DMA, I didn't even realize that the U.S. Naval Academy Band was having an audition, um, but happened to be on a gig, and a horn player was like, we were talking about what I was doing, and she said, "Well, you're auditioning for the Naval Academy Band, right?" Like, they're not having an audition. She's like, "No, no, no, they are." And I pulled up my phone to try to prove to her, no, that the band wasn't having an audition. But sure enough, in 2 weeks, there was going to be an audition.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to email my resume right now.
Right. Right.
And I was really thankful that it was a very standard list. So, I mean, I was already working up those excerpts, and then I was lucky enough to be selected.
That's awesome. Now, where is the Naval Academy?
So we're in Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay. Got it.
So, do you know the Maryland geography at all?
More or less. My sister went to school in Baltimore, so kind of know that
Oh,
region a
nice.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it makes a triangle of DC, Baltimore, and then Annapolis is towards the Eastern Shore.
DMV, as they call it.
Yes, yes. Not more fun than the other kind of
Than
DMV.
the other DMV. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great region. Like, there's so much music going on. Um, there's so many opportunities. Uh, Annapolis is just a gorgeous tourist town.
Yes, it
And
is. Yeah.
have you been out there?
Yeah, we've been sort of that whole I grew up in North Carolina, so we're pretty familiar
Oh,
with the
okay.
East Coast. My sister and her husband went to Peabody for grad school,
Oh,
so I
nice.
kind of
Yeah.
we would kind of know that area pretty well, and I've had several friends go to Maryland for school, so I
Hmm.
haven't been back that way in a while, but yeah, I'm familiar with it. It's awesome, and it's only, it's just like huge, and you're not that far from New York or Philadelphia or
Yeah.
any of those areas where it's just like tons going on. So that's awesome. And um, so in terms of the getting prepared for the audition, did you do anything differently
Yeah.
for the band auditions versus like a more traditional orchestral audition?
I really didn't.
Hmm.
It's interesting that I don't know, before I started taking band auditions, I think I somehow figured they'd be a little bit different. I mean, but the truth is that, you know, the playing skills that are going to suit orchestral playing well are also going to serve band music well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe at its loudest in concert band, you might play louder than you would in an orchestra potentially, but as far as the auditions go, some bands will ask some band excerpts, but a friend of mine was recently commenting that like the President's Own on their latest list, it's mostly orchestral excerpts. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Are there
there's a
any?
few.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, are there any like
Okay.
what were like the top, maybe like top three band excerpts somebody should at least be familiar with if they have any interest in U.S. service bands?
Oh, sure. So I think American Overture is
Yep.
a fairly popular one. I mean, it's useful. Like it shows, like how's your intonation, your articulations, um, playing in kind of a band style.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, yes, that's a popular one. Um, there's I know that there's been a lot of John Williams music that's been popping up on band auditions recently.
Oh, okay. I think
I think I saw.
I saw the fourth horn part to the the Hogwarts Forever quartet that's in the
Oh
first
yeah,
movie. I saw the fourth horn part to that one show up, and it's like an orchestral excerpt for horn for sure,
yeah.
for like a low horn player. It's very agile, and it's like lots of
Hmm.
weird like intonation funky things in there that could show a lot, as you say, on an audition.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I know one common one along those lines is the Princess Leia solo from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That
Yeah, there's that
that.
really great transcription, the Hunsberger one of it's like a
Hmm.
suite from the original Star Wars. It's like five movements, and I think like the second movement
Yeah,
is Leia's theme. It's all in the right keys and everything. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's just when we've got a beautiful melody that goes over the best range of the horn. Like, I mean, for an audition, it tells you what you need to do, and then this is something that groups are actually performing.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about like, okay, so you made the transition from, so you were out on the West Coast, Southern California, Midwest, and then now you're in East Coast. I imagine there were
Yep,
some,
exactly.
not just like transitioning from different teachers, and I'm sure they're all different. I don't know Nick Smith that well, but we've corresponded some, and he's just amazing. He's just had such
Oh,
a incredible
yeah.
career, and such great students have come out of that studio.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
what was that like? First, making the transition from West Coast, Midwest, now East Coast. What was that transition like? And then what was it like going from, you were basically, I'm assuming, a full-time student or part-time student, then doing
Hmm.
freelancing and stuff, and then you get this full-time job, full-time position in the Naval Academy band. What was that like making those various transitions?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, it was kind of interesting playing wise, kind of going from LA to the rest of the country.
Hmm.
Um, my understanding is that nowadays in the studio scene, um, people are not playing the crushby horns so much anymore.
I have heard. Yeah, I've heard
That's
that.
yeah. I mean, just like the beautiful sound of like movie soundtracks continues to be amazing.
Hmm.
Um, but when I was in LA, people were still playing on crushby horns.
Right, right. If not like straight up 8Ds, they're playing the Patterson versions of those.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was playing on a Hans Hoyer crushby horn,
Hmm.
and I love that horn. And now my dad's an amateur horn player, so that's now his horn.
Oh, cool. That's nice.
Uh,
That's cool that it runs in the family.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on a side note, he actually took up the horn because he didn't want me going to Kendall Betts camp by myself as a
I see.
16-year-old.
Okay, got it. Got it.
And then, as it turns out, he loved it so much that he's active in all these community bands. And one year, he even went to KBHC without me.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I was 2004 was the summer I went there.
Nice, yeah, yeah. So you know what that place is like.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's a great place.
I love it. But yeah, getting back to your question. So it was interesting that, I was, playing on my crush me horn, and then when I went to the Midwest, and I was taking orchestral auditions, the trend seemed to be kind of moving towards Geyer style instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know when that transition happened in LA. I think maybe it was around the same time,
Okay.
but it was 2013 that I went to IHS, and Nick Smith had told me, he's like, okay, you really should go try a Sorley. I think it's the closest thing you can try to a Rauk.
Oh, okay.
Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
first, like, I mean, Rauks are great instruments and you can't really get them easily.
They're like a friggin' heirloom now. It's like, carrying
Yeah.
around a Honda Civic in your case. I mean, it's they're good. I've seen them go for like $20,000. So
It's no joke. I mean, yeah, and I wonder, like, as time goes on, these instruments, they're durable, but they do have a lifespan. So, will
yeah,
they kind of go the way of like the vintage 8Ds,
yeah,
where
yeah.
people they're putting all their patches on it, and then, like, just eventually the poor horn just it's not going to last
Well,
forever.
yeah, and since you bring that up, it's sort of a philosophical question. It's like you do hear about those instruments where it's like, oh, rebuilt this and new this. And it's like, well, okay, so if the point of it is to have that instrument that has a provenance of, so and so played this in this group or whatever, and in this place, if it's been all rebuilt, like new valve, new lead pipe patches and all of this stuff, it's like, how much of the original is that even really? But you know I'm not
Yeah.
super, I'm not like, I'm not as into equipment as some folks. I'm kind of in the middle. Like I
Hmm.
I, I like talking about equipment. I'm really happy to, but it's interesting people that sort of get like really, really dialed into like a certain horn, a certain, whatever. But no, that's interesting. It's interesting to hear
Yeah.
that it's changing. I think that's probably a reflection of like, what the folks and maybe the LA Philharmonic are playing, and then, just
Yeah.
taste changing a lot. You know, the opinions vary on whether that's like a good thing or a bad thing, but that is interesting to note, especially for people who might be interested in going out there and doing some work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like studying with Nick Smith in at Wichita State?
Oh, he was great. I mean, he was like a second dad to me when I was out there. I mean, I went out there for the audition. I
Hmm.
sent him my tape, and then I flew out there to audition in person for him and the music director, and he just rolled out the red carpet.
Oh, great! That's good
Like,
to hear.
I I think he might have paid for the hotel out of his own pocket.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, and then he and his wife, they took me out to all the meals, and would give the grad students money to take me to the meals they didn't go to. And then I had a free day, and they just lent me their car
Oh,
so I could
wow!
drive around Wichita.
Well, they must have also really wanted you to choose that school, though. I mean, that's I that's exceptional for them to be that generous and
Yeah.
kind, and that's something in and of itself. But they also must have heard something on your audition recording that was like, okay, this is the person we really want this person to come here. So that's kudos to you too.
Oh, well, thanks. I think it's really more a statement of who the Smiths are. I mean, just
Yeah, he seems like a very kind person.
oh, he's so kind, and just would do anything for his students. And his wife Cheryl, she also plays the horn. And they would host us for like a kind of pre-Thanksgiving Day Thanksgiving dinner as a
Mhm.
studio. We'd have studio classes in what they called the garage mahal. Was a air conditioned garage that was had kind of nice acoustics.
Well, that's
And then
cool.
Cheryl would, yeah, Cheryl, she'd always like make us lunch when we came over for stuff. They hosted a croquet tournament for the horn studio.
My goodness. I have his book, the accuracy book.
Hmm.
That's been very helpful to me and my students. I think not a lot of people
Yeah.
know about it because I don't think it's it's not widely published, but it's a book everybody
Hmm.
could stand to get, because I feel like it's a lot of just really good practical wisdom from a longtime horn player.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's somebody who, I feel like he's a little under the radar, but I mean, just had a really wonderful career, a long career in the Midwest.
Hmm.
A fantastic principal player. Um, it was something sitting second horn to him, and he doesn't miss many notes.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
was just, it was.
that's cool. That's like getting, you're getting your weekly lessons, but then you're also getting those lessons of sitting in an orchestra and listening to, okay, here's how they prepare for an entrance. That's something somebody could tell you in a lesson, but until you actually see it happen and kind of just, or in the context of the actual thing, it just makes so much, it's more impactful, I think, when you get to see it happen in the real situation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was it
So,
a culture difference going from LA or LA area to Midwest?
yeah, it was kind of interesting. And, people still ask me when they find out where I went to school, they're like, oh, like, why'd you go to Wichita? Like, what brought you to Kansas? And, I mean, when I auditioned there, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised that, like, it is a very, like, self-contained, very cultured city
Mhm,
that, I mean, it's 3 hours from Wichita to Oklahoma City or Kansas City, and
mhm,
6 hours to Dallas, and other than that, it's kind of its own place.
mhm,
So, I mean, there's like a thriving musical theater scene. There's an amazing zoo. There's art galleries. There's just like all of these fantastic local restaurants. Um, I mean, the symphony. I think the people of Wichita, at least when I were there, they kind of were like, "Oh, it's just the Wichita Symphony." But I mean, for a regional group that you can't make a full time living off of, it's when I was there, it was a really pretty great orchestra.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and well, I tell you, those Lieurance wind quintet recordings are
Oh
really
yeah,
good. Like, if that's
yeah,
some of the best wind quintet playing you're gonna hear, is those CDs they've done.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I played in the Lieurance Quintet for the couple of years I was there.
Oh, that's cool.
And
What was that like? So
yeah,
was that kind of a mix of, like, faculty and grad students in that group?
it was actually it was all the faculty members, and then I was filling in for Nick.
Okay,
Because he kind of, was wanted a little bit of a break from quintet playing.
sure.
And I mean, it was I don't know what better chamber education experience I could ask for than being the grad student with four very accomplished faculty members.
Yeah, was that intimidating?
I mean, maybe to some extent, but
Uh-huh.
I mean, they were all just like such good people. Um, like we did a recital right when I got there,
Mhm.
and I remember we had a dress rehearsal for a recital on my birthday,
Oh, wow.
and then and they were very sweet about this. They're like, hey, I know it's your birthday, but this is the best time to schedule it. And then they made a point that after the actual recital, they took me out to a restaurant and then got me some chocolate cake.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was,
That's like
and then we.
best case scenario playing with, like, a
Oh
faculty
yeah,
ensemble. That's great.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we went on a trip. Actually, the reason the recital was in the fall was because we took a trip to St. Petersburg, Russia.
Mhm.
And so that was happening quickly enough in the school year. They wanted to make sure we had a performance in the States before we went over there.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, I mean, that was just one of my favorite trips in my whole life.
Well, yeah, what an
You
incredible
know,
opportunity. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
talk about, like, stuff
yeah,
to put on the resume and that kind of thing. That's incredible. Um,
yeah.
and then so you talked about getting into doctoral school at Maryland, and
Hmm.
then making your way into the Naval Academy band. I definitely want to go
Yeah.
back to that. I'm kind of keeping these threads sort of organized in
Sure.
my head.
I love tangents. We can do all the tangents.
I want to get back to that, but I will say the first time I kind of came across your work and your fantastic playing is your Wagner tuba recording, and then your horn with electronics recording. You know, you do some Wagner tuba recording, and then you do some horn playing on that album of music for horn and electronics. Do you want to talk a little bit about that project? Because I think that's still a really good resource for anybody that's looking for not just like interesting repertoire, but stuff that's like really good too.
Oh, well, thanks for your kind words, James.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Um, so it was kind of funny that I got into the horn electronic stuff because I was in third year of my DMA, wrapping things up, and then I had to pick a dissertation topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so my plan actually during my second year had been I was going to make the world's first solo Wagner tuba album.
Okay. Nice.
That was going to be my plan because I thought at the time that you could do a DMA dissertation as a CD.
Okay. Yeah. Some places
And
let you and some don't. Yeah.
yeah, yes, Greg Miller had told me that that was something he'd had students do in the past and should be good to go. So it was during that time that I actually commissioned Gone to the Other Shore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I also have to give a shout out to the Meir Rimon Commissioning Fund.
Yeah. That's a great
Yeah.
project.
I'm so thankful for it that, as a like broke DMA student, I definitely could not have afforded the whole thing on my
Mm-hmm.
own. So that was one of the things I was looking forward to. And I go to submit my proposal that I, found, there was a composer, Gary Backlund, very, very kind, wrote a sonata for me for Wagner Tuba and Piano. I was going to have an arrangement I made of the Ring Cycle abridged.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, thanks. I'll have to send it to you. I had a lot of fun writing it.
You should publish it. Have you thought about publishing it?
Well, it's up on Sheet Music Plus.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's on Sheet Music. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I think so, but I think I could use a little cleanup. But I played at IHS back in Muncie.
Okay, yeah.
But it was I really had a lot of fun of trying to condense the entire ring cycle down to like I think maybe it's 12 minutes for Wagner tuba piano. But there's an offstage horn player at one point.
Oh, neat.
For so they could do the short call and then some theatrics of like being about to play the short call, but then actually there's the offstage horn player.
That's the perfect thing for an IHS. Yeah, that's the perfect thing for a symposium.
Yeah, exactly. IHS, and then as absurd an instrument as the Wagner tuba is. So I was all ready to go. Third year of my DMAs, in fact, I think I even submitted my proposal for a dissertation and they rejected it, saying, hey, you can't do a CD. We know, like it was this weird thing where they knew that people had done it in the past, but there was nothing in the current documentation that said I could do it.
I see.
So, yeah. So by that time, it was into the fall of my third year, and I just wanted to get the thing done. So I decided that I would do a written dissertation. And, as I was kind of looking through the IHS thesis library, it seemed like a very practical way of doing a dissertation was to take some kind of a specific instrumentation and just really explore everything that's written for that instrumentation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so then it was really cool that, after doing Gone to the Other Shore and I'd actually on IHS, I had found Howard Buss's Alien Loop-de-Loops.
Isn't that a neat piece?
I love it. It's so goofy.
It's a neat piece. Yeah.
Piece. I love it.
Yep.
So after doing a couple of those, I was like, oh, what if I look into this horn and tape kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And yeah, and it was kind of perfect that I found, I think maybe about 40 pieces. And, I tell people that if they're looking for a dissertation topic, I feel like this style of paper, it almost kind of writes itself.
The
You
performance
know.
guides or like, repertoire guides, and they're eminently practical. Like when I was trying to find pieces for horn and electronics, I Googled it and your dissertation popped up. I was like, okay, there you go. There's stuff I can pick from for a recital. So, yeah, it's very practical and very useful.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad it's been useful to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed there's another someone is doing a presentation on it in Montreal next week. A presentation
That's
on
awesome.
horn and electronics. I can't remember who it is, but I mean, it's especially during COVID. Composers were trying to write
Oh yeah.
things, and so that just makes sense. If you can't even have a
Yeah.
pianist in the room with you, then who else have you got? You've got yourself, and you've got some
Hmm.
electronics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting how like it did gain some popularity during the COVID times that I don't think it quite had before.
Hmm.
But I think it's just really neat of with these pieces you can incorporate all of these sounds into recital that you can't produce by other means.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you want to have like nature sounds or sort of surrealist pseudo orchestral sounding things that don't exist in real life,
Hmm.
or just like a sine wave.
Right. Yeah. Everything's
I
possible now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there's also some cool stuff that's done with like recordings of speaking and
Hmm.
other kinds of recordings, and I think it's nice to break up the recitals that way. But I think another practical advantage that the horn and fixed media has is that you are rehearsing the way that it will be performed.
Right. It's not going to change. It's
Yeah, so
definitely
it's
not.
like yeah, and yeah, I'm guessing you probably have the same experience of like if you've got like a really tricky passage, you can do it 100 times in a row,
Hmm.
and it's not like working with a piano player or other chamber musicians where they're going to be like, "Hey, dude, no, like well, go work
Right.
that out on your own time."
Well, and and even with a very, very fine pianist, we're not machines. It's going to be subtly different probably every single time. So,
Yeah, yeah. Whereas like um, with some of the fixed media stuff that's maybe not quite as well documented, like I would write in like, okay, this held note is approximately 3 beats.
hmm.
And I give myself some little tips like that. Where I mean, like you said, you can't really do that with a living, breathing human.
Yeah. But you can also make eye contact with a human and kind of cue things if even
This
if
is true.
stuff starts to go off the rails. What I find with those is I'm like you too. I have my little cues and things, and but I find if like, okay, I know the electronics are not rushing or dragging. It's me, and it's always going to be me. And so I know like if I
Hmm.
hit it
Yep.
right, that goalpost is like, okay, I did it right this time. We landed there together. Or if I'm subtly ahead or subtly behind, it's interesting because it's not going to change. It's always going to be doing what it's doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah. But
I wonder if the next phase of that is like AI interacting with, the
ooh.
speed. Because for like movie scores and stuff, the way they track things, they've got things that can speed up or slow down just to kind of track with, the video. I wonder if that's the next
Yeah.
evolution of this is some kind of plug-in that like, oh, you're slow here, it'll slow down, or you're faster. I mean, there was smart music, but it didn't
Yeah.
quite, I don't know if you ever played
No.
that thing.
I
If you,
yeah, it's no. I mean, it was better than having nothing, but
right.
playing Strauss one on it, it's like it did not quite deliver on what it promised.
No, and it interprets like you subtly dragged that one beat there. Okay, now we're going to slow down 20 clicks, and now we're behind. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but no, that's really
Yeah.
cool. So I assumed you played Wagner tuba before you got into all this. What was it the experience? Because I know a lot of studio players, they play everything. They play whatever they need to play to get the
Oh
job
yeah.
done. Was that
Yeah.
what led to your interest in Wagner tuba, other than this is kind of a potential thing for a dissertation?
Well, I think I'm somebody who's always fascinated by just weird things. Just I like quirky things. So I mean, I think I'd known for a long time that the Wagner tuba existed.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was, I'd like checked one out at USC and kind of played around with it. I went to Tuba Christmas with my sister and my dad. Um, but then it was when I was at Maryland, I had to pick a lecture recital topic.
Okay.
And so, I was thinking about different things. And then I asked Greg, like, hey, could I do my lecture recital on the Wagner tuba?
Mm-hmm.
And he was all for it. So, there's not much that's written for solo Wagner tuba. So that was where, but it was cool that, it's going back to fixed media kind of things. Stephen Cottle's Edel Rhapsody,
I don't know
which is
that
for
one.
Wagner tuba. Oh, you should check it out. It's a really charming piece.
Okay.
It's for Wagner tuba and I think chamber orchestra.
Okay.
It's a really cool little piece, and you can, when you buy a copy of the Wagner tuba part, you can get an MP3 of the orchestra.
Oh, nice.
So that was one of the things I played on my lecture recital, was this thing that was specifically written for that. And then I did the Hindemith alto horn sonata.
Okay.
Which I was like, okay, technically this is not the same instrument, but it works.
Ish. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's in that tonal, area in terms of the tone color.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then that was where I premiered my ring cycle abridged for Wagner Tuba Piano and Shenanigans.
That's cool. So what did you do anything specific in terms of, like, I know in my experience playing Wagner tuba, it kind of feels like a horn, but there's enough different about it that you have to really spend some time. Like, I remember I was just playing a lot of like Bordoni vocalises and stuff just to get used to trying to be musical on the thing. Luckily it's fingered with the same hand, left hand fingering, use a horn type mouthpiece, but the bell is in a completely different place. You don't use your hand. It's kind of a bit different, right?
It is. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I feel like the best thing for practicing on it is just to play just good music that's nice to just play through.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest challenge with it is the intonation.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that maybe there hasn't been a full solo Wagner tuba album so far.
I will say on a good tuba, it's not as squirrely. And then, like, if you have one with like a fourth valve, you can find some alternate fingerings and things.
Yeah. One thing I did that I found was pretty useful was I made a fingering chart for my specific instrument.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went through and I was just sort of like messing around with each note of what's the best fingering for this specific instrument.
Yeah.
And then kind of note the tendencies in addition to that. But like, the fingerings that I use, I actually, so my instrument, it's a Jinbao compensating double.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, my horn is, set with standing in F with B flat horn. But actually on my Wagner tuba, I have it standing in B flat.
Oh, okay.
Because for the most part, if I'm playing the Wagner tuba, it's a B flat Wagner tuba part.
Right.
So I really only have the F side there kind of as alternate fingerings or for the low range with the notes that don't exist on the B flat side.
Yep.
So when it's standing in B flat, I just mentally think of it as, okay, this is a B flat instrument, but like sometimes I'll write in as alternate fingerings, like, okay, like thumb one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just for like very selective notes that I'll use the F side.
That's smart. Yeah, that's a really good idea. What did you end up going with mouthpiece wise? Because I must have tried like 5 or 6 or 7 different mouthpieces, all with the same rim, but like it's like I got to find something that makes that note not so bad. Like I could deal with it being a little bit off, but if it's like, whoa, that's just like way out of the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like we were talking about earlier, I enjoy equipment, but like I'm not an equipment person. So I kind of like just keeping the same mouthpiece. I've got
Mm-hmm.
a Lasky. I don't even remember what model my Lasky is,
Mm-hmm.
but it works well enough. Maybe one day I'll play around with a different Wagner tuba mouthpiece, but for now, just my standard Lasky mouthpiece seems pretty all-purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially on, you're not playing the low tuba, the single F tuba. I think on a
No.
compensating one, it probably the familiarity of having your same mouthpiece as your horn probably um, is the advantages probably outweigh the disadvantages, and I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like unless somebody's in some really unique situation where they're playing a lot of Wagner tuba, probably they're mostly playing horn, and the familiarity is an advantage.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. Do you get to play it? Have you ever played Wagner tuba in the band? Anything that calls for Wagner tuba?
No, no, my colleagues make fun of me for playing it, and they keep threatening that like somebody's gonna put Wagner tuba on something. But so far, actually, I did play in uniform on the Wagner tuba when I was at IHS in Muncie.
Okay.
So I was in my summer white uniform, but haven't actually played it with the band. And I mean, it'd be cool if there ever was a situation, but I don't really see that happening.
Somebody'd have to do a really faithful transcription of like Stravinsky or Wagner or something. But then, like, what
Yeah,
do you give the euphoniums?
exactly. Well, and
Not
then
the Wagner
my
tuba
band,
part.
exactly. But my band's actually so small. Like we only have one euphonium player, and
Hmm.
we don't even have an oboe player.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what your
Yeah,
day to day is like in the band, and every band has a mission, right? Like, or what
yeah,
they're meant to do, both on the like in terms of the entire United States, and then in the branch of the military, and then like what that specific band or unit's job is. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys do in the Naval Academy Band?
sure. So the mission of the Naval Academy Band is to support the Brigade of Midshipmen. So those are the students at the Naval Academy.
Okay.
And then we also support the superintendent, who's kind of the military equivalent of the president.
Okay.
Um, and then kind of falling under that are a lot of military ceremonies.
Hmm.
So I feel like this week is kind of a perfect example of what our ceremonial workload looks like. Where Monday morning I had a full honors funeral.
Okay.
So we're out there in our long wool coats and 90+ degree weather, and
Oh my goodness.
playing. It's what I like most about my job is we do so many different kinds of things.
Hmm.
There's the military bands that they basically just live at Arlington,
Hmm.
and so they're like full honors funerals are basically their job.
Yeah.
So for us, it's challenging to be out there in a long wool coat in the middle of summer, but we have a lot of variety of what we do. So like you kind of it keeps you on your toes a little bit because we don't do tons and tons of funerals.
Hmm.
So we did that, and then in the afternoon there was a retirement ceremony. So played that with the brass quintet.
Hmm.
And then Tuesday, I teleworked. We can talk a little bit more about sort of the office side of things if you want.
Yeah, that would be great because I think a lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize, like, even those full-time premier band jobs, there's always an associated duty. Like, it just really
Yeah.
varies depending on what the needs of the band are. But yeah, you're never
Hmm.
just like that's your only thing you do. Everybody has to do
Yeah.
something.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not for everybody that, if somebody only wants to be an orchestral horn player, they're not going to get that in a military band. But, for somebody like me and a lot of people I work with, I actually kind of like it better that I do things besides just play the horn.
Hmm.
So the bands, they're all self-contained. So some of the larger bands will have a few non-playing staff members, but for the most part, like you said, it's everybody has to do something within the band.
Mm-hmm.
And, that can range from being in charge of record keeping with, people's pay and dependent status and, when is their military contract, or people could work in operations. So that's scheduling the gigs, deciding who is going to play on which gig. And then I work in the supply shop.
Okay.
So one of the things I do is I'm in charge of IT for the band.
Mm-hmm.
So I manage the computers. I'm the person people come to when things are breaking.
I know the feeling. I'm kind of default that at my school sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so there's I do that, and then I'm also in charge of what's called minor property. So
What's that?
basically, it's basically our instruments.
Oh, okay.
But it also includes microphones and speakers and stuff that I don't know how to identify without asking our sound engineer.
If it's heavy, it's probably expensive.
It's surprising sometimes knowing the value of things. Like our ugliest flute by far is worth 20,000.
Oh my goodness. What's it made of? Platinum or something?
I don't even know. It is ugly, but apparently it plays really nicely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you get a different horn when you joined the band, or were you able to? Did you keep the one you came in with?
I've seen a lot of people come in and then they're like, "Oh, now that I'm in this situation where somebody will buy me an instrument, I want to try this one."
Right.
And I feel like that backfires almost all the time. Since I run the closet of instruments, like there's so many really nice instruments where the band bought somebody a nice instrument, and then it turned out it wasn't what they were hoping it'd be, and then it just sits in the closet, and people are playing their personal instruments on gigs.
Yeah, now it's in your inventory and you can't get rid of it.
Yeah. So when I got there, I was like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Darren Sorley built me a horn that was pretty similar to the one that I used as my personal horn.
Nice.
So so it's really great. That I mean, they're a little bit different, but they're similar enough that unless I'm doing like a recital in the next like few days, pretty much they're interchangeable for practicing on.
Oh, that's cool. That's nice to have a backup too.
Yeah. It's really nice of just like, my band horn lives in my locker at work, and then my personal horn, it like rarely goes in the case because it's at my house.
That's cool. I'll tell you a funny story. I won't name I won't name the branch of the service, but you might be able to figure it out. So somebody was telling me, so they did the thing. They got into a premier band. They wanted to get like, whatever boutique horn, and they were like, well, it's not on our list, and it's not that it's like expensive or anything. It's like, doesn't matter how much it costs, it's just not on the list of possibilities from the sheet. Like, I think they wanted a triple or something, and like all they had on the list were double horns. So because a triple was not on the list that they could pick from, they're like, no, you can't do that. And I remember that person telling me that. I was like, yeah, that okay, I can kind of see that. It was like, it's not on the list, so you can't buy it.
Yeah, it's funny because we have to come up with these military justifications for buying instruments.
Yeah.
So like I also play on a single B flat brizz horn for marching band.
Those aren't too bad. They're really light.
It's not. No. I mean, like when needed, I prefer to play on my double nice horn for ceremonial gigs. But I mean, if I'm in a pinch, like I can do a retirement ceremony on my single B flat.
Did they get those from Ken Pope, by the way?
Yeah,
he's got some. They're pretty good.
They really are. Yeah, but it was funny in the justification for why we needed this instrument. I had to come up with just reasons like, oh, this will help with ergonomics, which is true. I mean, a lighter instrument is easier on your joints. But I just, I had to just come up with stuff so that somebody who lives in the world of tanks and artillery and things like that. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like a solid purchase.
It's mission critical. That's what you have to say.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Somebody
Yeah.
else was telling me, like, they worked in development, like fundraising and stuff, but they also were, in a professional performer, and they said trying to explain to their coworkers in, the not music performance side of things, like, well, basically we are always working under deadline. Like when you're in a rehearsal and you have to deliver right then, it can't be like 2 hours from now when you feel like it. It's like we're on a deadline. And they said that
Yeah.
that actually made a lot of sense to their coworkers. It's like when you're a performer, you're always working on a deadline. So, it's funny how you have to retranslate things sometimes just to get the point across.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I want to thank you, Erica, again for, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I thought
Oh,
maybe a good place to kind of wrap things up might be to talk about, in your opinion, what would be like some really good reasons to promote people being interested in being in a military band. We talked about the benefits are amazing, and you can have a career doing it. It's not just, like a side gig or anything. You can make a decent living and all of that stuff. So maybe talk a little bit about that, like kind of, when you go to those military concerts, they always do their recruiting appeal, like here's why you should be interested in this particular thing. And then maybe talk a little bit about, you know, uh, that's not just that's not everything that you do. You've got a life and a family and, other interests and things like that, and how you kind of balance all that with being a busy professional.
sure. Um, so I think the easiest thing for the military jobs is like we talked about earlier, the job security and the pay and benefits.
Hmm.
When I was in music school, I was just thinking about, oh, like who will just pay me so that I can play a horn all day?
Hmm.
And then, okay, well, even by that metric, like the military groups, I mean, they compensate you pretty competitively with um, quite good orchestral situations.
Hmm.
Um, but one thing I was not thinking about when I was looking at the military bands was kind of the benefits to family life
Hmm.
in the military bands. So I don't know if you're aware, but the military actually runs arguably the best childcare system in the whole country.
I didn't know that. That's good to hear.
A lot of people, it's pretty cool. Like it's held up a lot of times as an example of like what childcare could be in America.
Mm.
That as service members, we have access to childcare. 6 weeks old through. They'll give subsidies for before and after school care for school age kids.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so then the thing about this is that it's priced based on income,
Okay.
and so and the centers for the daycares, like the quality is just fantastic. That they're very very clean. When I was pregnant with my now 3-year-old, I toured a center thinking, oh, okay, like I don't know if I'll do this military daycare thing. Like they're probably gonna like yell at they're gonna yell at the kids. It's gonna be like boot camp. But no, it's actually like it's Montessori school. Like
Oh,
there are no
wow.
or there well, I was about to say there are no screens, but there's like one computer in the preschool room where they play some high quality stuff on
Hmm.
like a very limited time. But I know they're the teachers are so caring. They're um, highly educated. I'm going off on a tangent about this, but the thing is that with the bands, I calculated that for my family, we're saving $40,000 a year by sending the kids to the military daycare and by having them on the military health insurance.
That's
And
huge.
that if I
Yeah.
was, it's nuts because I mean, like if I left my job, I mean, if I could find a job that made 40,000 period, that'd probably be like, some reasonable expectation. But I
Hmm.
mean, the fact that it's $40,000, that's how much we're saving.
On top
Um,
of salary, and yeah, that's amazing.
exactly. Yeah. And then for people who want to stick with the careers long term, if you get to 20 years, they will give you a pension after
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep. And you could go
And
on
so
and have
that
a career doing something entirely different if you wanted to, after your 20.
exactly. Or a lot of people they'll do their 20 years and then they go off and they get a teaching job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think,
Yeah.
as you go up in rank, you get like the raises come with it. It's not like whether they can, feel like giving you a raise. It's like it comes with the promotion.
Well, and then even beyond just the promotions, but we get cost of living increases every year,
That's
which
great.
is, I mean, it's incredible that, I mean, this is something that comes up in Congress every year of, let's increase the military pay.
Mm-hmm.
Things are expensive, and I'm really lucky to take advantage of that.
Well,
But
that's
that's another
awesome.
thing that it's kind of interesting to me that like with an orchestra, I mean, aside from maybe becoming a principal player or some other kind of title position, that
Mm-hmm.
there's not really promotions the same way as the bands where when like you can get promoted in a band, and you know like
Mm-hmm.
that's not an opportunity that you'd have the same way in an orchestra.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point to make. Yeah. Let's maybe wrap up here in just a few minutes and talk
Sure.
about maybe tie all of these things together with the column
Sure.
and the horn call and talk about maybe
Sure.
um things you've got coming up, projects you've got coming up, or ideas you have for the Military Matters article or Military Matters column.
Well, it's been really fun to do the Military Matters column for the last kind of year and a half, I think.
You've been the person since the beginning, I believe, haven't
Yeah,
you? Or
yeah,
was it?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's been me, and yeah, thanks for inviting me to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's as you've pointed out in this podcast, it is such a huge employer of musicians, and it's such a good job for the right kind of person that wants that kind of a career. I mean, they're really great, and I've got lots of friends who've done it, and they just love it. So no, I thank you for doing it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. But it's been really fun, especially like getting to know horn players in other countries.
Hmm.
Then that every time I talk to somebody, it's amazing that the military bands overseas, like there are things that are different, but there's definitely like some dynamics that
Hmm.
are they're like yes, very relatable.
The military life, yeah.
Yeah, well, but I mean, even like little things like the horn player who kindly wrote an article for the upcoming horn call, he was talking about the prevalence of coffee culture in his
Oh.
band, and like that's my band. Like in Annapolis, we have the best coffee scene, and you know, somebody's kind of the odd one out if they're not a coffee drinker.
I think the whole military runs on coffee. I think, you
I
know,
think I think the whole adult world runs on coffee.
this is true. Yeah, this is true.
As far as upcoming projects, something I'm really excited about right now is my band is working on a commission. Dr. Brett Abaganya, who's written all kinds of neat stuff in a lot of different genres, he is going to be writing for us a piece for band, women's choir, organ, and soprano.
Oh, neat. That sounds really cool. And
Yeah,
you did an
yeah.
article about the composition, like the contest you had for your band at one
Oh,
point, right?
yeah. So yeah. So that was actually something a little bit different. Yeah, the call for scores was essentially I was having trouble finding brass ensemble music
Mm,
that would work with just two horns.
I see.
So we just thought we'd see what happens if we opened up a contest of, hey, you just submit some music for brass instruments, and
Hmm.
then our director decided to turn it into an annual thing.
That's
And
cool.
so thanks. Yeah. So for us, it's we rotate every 3 years between we did brass the first year, chamber winds the second year, and then this year it's jazz pieces.
Oh, wow. That sounds like fun. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So yeah. Like, I mean, I wish I could be involved in some capacity in that, but I mean, yeah, I'm not a jazz player, but so that's been really fun to do that at work. But this commission is actually a totally separate project.
Oh, okay.
So
When's the premiere of
that's
that
something
happening?
I think it's set for January.
Okay, 2024.
And I think so. And so the idea is that it'll be a work that's dedicated to women in naval leadership.
Oh, okay.
And so it's been really cool that the committee that's planning it was you know, two female members of the band, me
Mm-hmm.
and helping out one of our senior chiefs. And then the piece itself will be done with the Midshipmen's Women's Glee Club.
Oh,
So we'll
cool.
be involved with the students at the Naval Academy. And then we're bringing in a professional soprano. And then, we're still kind of hashing out the details of exactly what text we're going to use. And, but I mean, like, I'm a sucker for like kind of making a performance experience of playing with like performers throughout the venue and getting creative with that sort of thing.
No, that's a really great
So,
idea. Yeah, and I think one of the things I've noticed with at least the people I've talked to and my friends and that have been in military groups is, as we've said, it's not just about your playing. You obviously have to be, a very competent player, but you're learning and you're getting experiences doing so many other valuable things. Your entrepreneurial skills. You work with IT, but you also do some property management and, almost like human resources type things, being like, working with different people. And so, that it's just such a good all around experience.
yeah, I'm, feel really lucky every day to go to work and, my colleagues are fantastic. A friend of mine had said, it's kind of interesting that, there's those famous orchestral players that have these like decades long feuds. And,
Hmm.
not everybody in the bands gets along all of the time. But his theory is that we don't have so much of the multi-decade feuding in the bands because nobody's under the illusion that Sousa is high art.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's priorities are kind of in line. Yeah.
Exactly. That it's like, this is a job. It's a great job. And, we can go, make some artistic fulfillment sometimes within the job and sometimes outside of the job.
Hmm.
But the job itself, it's a great job. But I don't think people get as wrapped up in themselves as like, I mean, orchestral players, with Mahler. I mean,
Sure.
so many
Yeah.
people, they view things like that as really transcendent, and Sousa's not transcendent.
Yeah, there's a lot of other words you could use to describe Sousa, but transcendent's probably not on the list. So, but no, I think
No.
I think that approach and that outlook is ultimately much healthier, though. I mean, I think keeping things in perspective. At the end of the day, yes, it is your job, it's your art, so to speak, but there's a lot more to life. So,
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
it's something I'm excited about for next summer. I don't know if this will be at IHS or at the International Women's Brass Conference. I'm going to be premiering a piece that I commissioned for my friend Brian KM.
Oh yeah, I know Brian.
And
Yeah.
you know Brian? Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. But he wrote me a piece for Horn and Fixed Media
Hmm.
called Conversations with Dominic.
Okay.
And so I knew I wanted to have him write a piece for me. So I sent a bunch of ideas. And the one he really liked was I said, well, why don't you just record like the weird conversations I have with my then 2-year-old?
Okay.
And he loved that idea. And he made this piece where there's an electronic track that
Hmm.
includes selections of my conversations with my 2-year-old.
That's really cool. And his stuff is like next level. I mean, there's playing horn with a
Yeah.
track and then there's like the stuff he's doing, which is really incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, talking about the horn electronics people, I feel like him and Nick Fife, who was
Mm-hmm.
recently on the podcast, they're
Yep.
the ones who are really doing the cool stuff with the electronics.
Yeah, they're really doing some good stuff. Well, Erica, that's awesome, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, James. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.